at Akabé. And the discussion started, whether we should participate in this thing or not. And I recall distinctly, as if it were yesterday, Janet Jagan headed a small group of oppositionists, in which I was a member, that we were opposed to participating. And a lot of people wanted to participate for a variety of reasons. 69 of us, the entire leadership of the party, and the GAO, the RP, and all sorts of other people, and organizers. And at the end of the big discussion, the common leader called for the vote. And he said, those in favor of participating, raise your hand. And all the hands started to up, including Janet's hand. But she was speaking against this thing all the time. So as her hand went up, some other comrades who was with her, Muda, Rajkumar, and their hand went up too. Well, I watched this whole thing. And then the common leader said, those against, raise your hand. One hand went up, Raymond Gaskin. So the Guyana, I opposed it. I don't care Janet raised she hand. That's she business. I opposed it. And we know what happened after. Rigged elections. And it took the party 24 years to get a decent election in '92 because it participated in evil repeatedly and unnecessarily. And you have to wait 24 years. And the reason why you get it is in '92 because the Soviet Union, we told, collapsed, it was overthrown in '91. And the whole world had changed. And in '92, we got some reasonable election. But the PNC, we know them well. All of us here should know them by now. They're good at rigging, they're the big experts at rigging elections. From 68 onwards, all of them. And they burn and postpone the election for 2 years, from 78 to 80, and there's minority. From 90 to 92, we know these people, we don't say you don't know them. Or we could say you don't know them. We cannot participate in evil. They want to rig them, they rig them without me. So that's what I wanted to tell you. This is the question that eventually the party leadership and its supporters will have to contend with, whether you want to participate in something that is evil and wrong. That's the question. Not just the consequences of 18. There are plenty of consequences of 18. But generally speaking, the no confidence motion, which was laid in the National Assembly by the opposition leader, tested a lot of people. And since then, a lot of them have been tested. I've been thinking about it. The first people that were tested, of course, were from the government side, that they wanted to join with the opposition in the no confidence. The only man who rose to that challenge, of course, is Charan Das. Charan Das' name will be inscribed indelibly in the history of this country when the proper history is written. And the motion was passed. The motion was passed. Charan Das was tested, and he did what he think he had to do, and he did it. And then, since then, December, we get this whole merry-go-round right up to the 18th. Look how long. Although we know the Constitution, and I know the Constitution, all these lawyers say they'll tell you what the Constitution says. They are within 3 months to give up the work, call elections, they have to resign. Constitution is clear. All of them say they don't understand it, they shall resign. The president and the cabinet shall resign. And all the elections within 90 days, 3 months. And up to now we can't get this thing. And the government is making a fool of everybody. They're making an ass of everybody for the time being, up to now. They may not always be able to make an ass of people. But right now I would say, as an observer of the politics, they're winning this round one. Because since December, we're in September 18th, 20th now, and nobody's resigned, and they're fooling around with all the courts and so on. But everybody's been tested. The speaker was tested. He's the first man to have been tested after Charan Das. Because he came back and he said, yes, when he reviewed the thing, the count was valid, and the motion was valid. Then Then we get to test the other people. With the man that get tested most of all, and we get to know the real Ranger. Is the Mr. Ranger David? You get to know the real Ranger. You didn't know that before. This I didn't know. But I got to see him now. The real Ranger that he is. Over the he been tested and he's failed the test. But we know about the Williams, he been tested, he's on my list. He been tested and he's been doing a good job of time wasting and dragging out this thing endlessly. And then Mr. Nigel used, not Hinds, used. He's the man that said 35 is half of 33 and all that ignorance that drag out this thing endlessly. Everybody knew ignorance. But it cost a lot of months. We're still September 20th, since December 2018. So they were tested. Then the courts were tested. The courts were tested. The first court here, under the leadership of the acting Chief Justice Roxanne, who gave the decisions, and then they took it to the court here in Kingston that overturned her, and then went up to the bigger people there. And so they were all tested. This court here, they're in this, I think they're across the road, failed miserably and deliberately and I mean, ignominiously and it's terrible how they behave. Law marks every subject. And then the people in CCJ tried to straighten the matter. But they too failed to straighten the matter definitively. They were, I say, wishy-washy. They upheld the thing, but they said they didn't want to issue coercive orders. They believe in the integrity of the politicians to do the thing right. All nonsense. It never happened. It never happened. It will never happen. It depends on themselves to do anything right. And then we're into the question of elections. And up to now, this man is resigning, you know. He doesn't understand what shall resign mean. And Rohee was asking what the Constitution. He said in today's paper that he observed in the Constitution. Today's paper. Imagine this guy. In today's paper, he said, I am observing the Constitution of this country. But he also made a promise here which struck me as interesting. And he said, here's what he said in today's paper. This paper is Stop. This is interesting, this promise he made. Rohee, you are reading this, you read that. He said, and I want to promise you, I am committed to ensuring a safe and secure environment for business and so on in the process leading to the elections, during the elections, and after the elections. After. Not only I can promise you the thing now, I can promise you the thing after the election. Oh, does he know that? He knows something that I don't know? The man said it here. He said, after the elections, I can promise you this. How does he know? After him, you are reading this thing. This man said, you know that even after the elections, he can promise all these things. And I believe he knows what he's talking about. It is my considered opinion that we're headed towards a rigged election. We're headed towards a rigged election. This rigging here will be done on the basis of lists. Old lists and new lists, all kind of lists. This election is going to be rigged on the basis of lists. Absolutely, absolutely. They're working in it over there, low feeling all of them. They're doing all that with making up name, adding people, removing you name your own president, you weren't there when we come at your house. They when they came to my house, I was there though. But I can't tell you this public meeting what I told them in English in clearly. I can't repeat it here. They come to register me. Register me? I'm on the list. What do you mean? I was on the list. Come register me? Now are you kidding me? I use some strong language. What they call what the front language. Can't use it. Come to register Gaskin. Now are you kidding me? What the front language? So this election here is being rigged. And the BBP got to make up its mind whether they want to participate in evil. I know there's an initial response that they want to participate in evil. I hope they get a chance to review this. And I hope Sam talks to them too. But this rigging of elections, we know the PNC, we know them now. I know them now. I'm 77. I know them now. It started with Patterson. This whole idea to corrupt the electoral process and it started with Patterson. Well, he gone. He gone. And now we have the former judge, Gareth Singh. Gareth Singh, when she came to the job, we thought, not me, plenty people thought she was a good woman. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Since she get the work, what she do for me, for I ain't see nothing. I think she doing PNC work. To simplify the language, she doing PNC work. Because she can't the elections next year. It's as simple as that. I don't care if people disagree with me. Because they're doing PNC work. So therefore, what is to be done? We know what we are into. We know what is the present position, what is to be done. The first thing I would, two things to be done. This is my opinion I'm giving you. Is a complete policy of non-cooperation with evil. Done you got influence in the party. No cooperation with evil, none. I have to fight them to the end. And we fight them internally, we fight them externally. To make sure that we put an end to evil. This election coming up is sure evil and wicked and thieving. No doubt about it in my mind. No doubt about it in my mind. So how do you stop it? Can you stop it?
Yeah.
The opposition doesn't have the kind of leverage it used to have years ago in 68. The kind of cuts. But still a lot of things can be done. We hear the diplomatic people talking. I guess the leadership got to talk to them. But the next problem we have in 2020 is our country. And they're not unconnected issues. For start, ExxonMobil, elections in this country, they're not unconnected. It would be a useful thing to demand this so-called date. We want to know the date. Then they say, he say he waiting for she to give a date. Well, she tell he, well, give me the date now. Who more you waiting on? You say you're waiting on the lady. Well, the lady tell you. But this list, I think it was a good idea if we were to demand to embed into the secretariat, into the GCOM and Lolo place where you work in, people to do the audit of the list and the so-called margin of the list, which is where the rigging taking place. The rigging is taking place right now as we speak. That's an election year. Right now it's taking place. Absolutely. We have to demand to be there to do auditing of everything. Every name you remove and every name you put on. We want to know who these people. We need to know that. We have to demand the scrutineers. There are over 9,000 people over there. We need over 5,000 or 10,000 people and 9,000 people, I'm telling you. And those are the crooks over there headed by a man called Lolo Field. And then we need to demand that overseas people come and be embedded inside GCOM. Not come election day. Election day too late for them. Election day too late. Now. And if you can't get that fixed now, you have to make up your mind whether you want to go on election day into this lawlessness or not. You still have time, but you ought not to make the decision now that you want to go and participate in lawlessness. You have enough time to think about that. And I think the people in this country in the opposition will have time to think about it, whether they want to participate in wickedness. That is the big decision. Thank you very much.
I see a lot of people smiling and enjoying the contribution by Nigel. You know, I think it was yesterday after the caretaker president gave in the Pegasus. A couple of journalists tackled him, so to speak, and asked him some questions about, well, now that the lady has given time frame, number one, and two, now that the US, the UK, and the European Union has issued a statement, how you intend to respond to them. And his response was that he is going right away to consult with his cabinet. So an illegal president going to discuss with an illegal cabinet how to deal with an illegal situation. After now, we haven't heard anything. More than 24 hours after that. And so we have to assume that the cabinet is still in session and the discussions are still going on. But in effect, what we're witnessing here is another attempt at delaying that. Delaying again, and this is likely to, we hope not, but it looks as though that will go on for some more time. So we now move to our next speaker, who is Mr. Nigel Hinds. And Mr. Hinds has spoken before at fora of this type and other types, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Nigel to the microphone.
Good evening, one and all. Thank you, Mr. Rohee, organizing the Gaskin Christopher Ram and former Foreign General and former Prime Minister and President, and namesake Samuel Hinds. I thank all of you in the audience for being here. It's always good to be here to speak to the people of Guyana. Easy to some extent, except when you're following in the footsteps of Raven Gaskin. When this event was scheduled, the ABC countries, that's America, Britain, and Europe, ABE, had not issued the overdue statement of the government of the Guyana Constitution. They failed to adhere to the decisions and subsequent orders of the Supreme Court of Justice, and that the breach of the Constitution comes at great cost to us all, the Guyanese people, in which of the Constitution undermines Guyana's institutions, compromises economic opportunities, delays developments, including infrastructure, education, health, and social services. They said it hinders American, UK, and EU in supporting Guyana's developmental needs. Obviously, it's almost like a threat to say, well, if we don't go ahead and have an election soon, they might cut investments and support to Guyana, which is probably needed if an election date is not set soon. They further went on to say that Granger must set the election date immediately. And from looking at our constitution, that word is almost amorphous and vague. Immediately. Many times, when you put it in the context of the Guyana election cycle, or what is required before an election date is set, you find you need probably 30 to 60 days when you look at objections period and the name of the list and all of these things. So, fortunately, we've gotten some lead time, in my opinion, from Justice Claudette Singh, and a lot can be put in place, and I think former President Nigel alluded to this with the overseas observers coming in. And I would differ somewhat from Mr. Gaskin. I believe the elections, as all elections have some amount of rigging, but with the fortitude and the commitment of those on the ground, and I've been a review of statement of polls, and I've seen that the PPP has the depth and the resources to have scrutineers virtually across the country. And with a new system in place, which is much different from 1968 and many years thereafter, where you place the results at the place of polling, it is very difficult to rig an election extensively. What one has to be careful of is what's going on with immigration and the multitudes that are coming into our land and being accommodated with voting in mind. Well, we are in a sea of violations, breaches, and destructive behavior brought upon us by the executive branch of the government of Guyana. I can take this opportunity to speak on the meanings of Articles 161, 62, 106, 155, and Article 61. I will not. When I was contacted to make this presentation at this forum, my brain register opened a file on the record-breaking and game-saving partnership between Alvin Caventura and Clive Lloyd in the 1981 Sheffield match between Guyana and Trinidad. Lloyd was helicoptered from Timeri to join Caventura at the crease. The score was then 112-6. We were playing against Trinidad. And it was not as catastrophic as our current political dilemma. However, we ascended then with Caltran scoring 184 and Lloyd making 144 to put Guyana in a winning position. This was in 1981. Many of you are scratching your head at this segue. The purpose is to illustrate how a cross-section of our leaders, whether it's inter-team, inter-party, or between parties, can be successful in putting Guyana first. We Guyanese are now hopefully on the verge of emerging from 9 months of quagmire, political quagmire, that violated key sections of the Constitution as we await the election date pronouncement from President Granger. I use the term President Granger because I feel that in this climate, and what's possible when you have the Attorney General Basil saying they were illegal virtually since the 21st of March. So to me, it doesn't change. The 6 months doesn't change it. Talking with the burning of properties or so, we have to be very careful. And I think, and I'll come to that a little later on, of how we conduct ourselves in the process, which is absolutely necessary. But we have to recognize the demographics and the geography of Guyana and what this section of Guyana means to the people who hold the power. And we don't want our country to go back to the 60s, and I think a lot of some bad stuff happened in the late 90s and so early 2000s. So it's in that context, I think Frederick the Great spoke of this. Even when you're crushing your enemy, you do it in a courteous, graceful manner. After witnessing the remarkable 470,000 registrants via an unnecessary, unusable, and unreliable house registration process, and yet we still have the non-resignation of the president and his cabinet, illegally constituted cabinet decisions, while court decisions and court orders are being ignored. We also had some of our political scholars and their legal advisors come up with new math equations and more twisting interpretations. Fortunately, facts and figures and logic did not correlate with their global research. Truth be told, the whole purpose was to delay and ignore reality, and they have enjoyed several months of success in this regard, as Raymond attributed earlier. The usual suspects will look at my participation at this forum and refer to me as a sellout, a hypocrite, a house slave, and they just cannot shed racist ideas to embrace racial equality. The naysayers and purveyors of hate, race hate, avoid logic and facts and must be rejected or ignored. Regarding the no confidence motion and the role played by Sharandas Prasad, there is a specific event that I believe played a role in Mr. Prasad's decision to vote with the opposition, and it is the closure of the sugar estates at Enmore, Skeldon, and Rosehall in 2017, following the closure of Wales Estate in 2016. I had written a letter that was published in the mainstream media that referenced the termination of workers who were largely from one racial group, and that the action was taken against the recommendation of the commission inquiry appointed by the government of Guyana. Putting those alongside the sight of former Finance Minister Ashmi Singh and former head of NACL, Winston Brassington, in handcuffs, I think this was early this year or late last year, at the magistrate's court, having to go down a shoot, like, common criminals, spoke to the callous and unwarranted charges that have been implemented against ex-government officials. This vendetta and persecution politics really has to stop. And I say this with the belief that this party, the PPPC, and whatever coalition it joins with, if it does at all, should not go forward in the same vein that the PNC came into power with in 2015. It was very destructive and has proven to be so. Then you have the sight of, I would think Minister Rohee may have been there, but a number of senior ministers being marched into Eagle to be questioned. I mean, this is backwardness extrapolated. We can't keep going down that road. It will create opportunities for more divisiveness. And clearly that has been the case then, and we should avoid it in the future. The persecution charges, including Pradoville, where you have a former president, Dr. Lumsden, and several other ministers being, if they were, I don't think they were in handcuffs, but they were taken to great questioning. These are things that for me, I feel a visceral, it's almost tragic to just watch that process, that we, intelligent people on both sides, and yet this is what we've devolved to. Then you have the seizure of the Chedijagan Resort Center, the attempted seizure. So when I put those together, the sugar issues, the Prado bills, the persecuted politics, and this attempted seizure of the Chedijagan Resort Center, those stand out to me as issues that have been very divisive and have caused the coalition to lose whatever credibility they had with votes that may have been considered crossover votes. It's as if they shot themselves in the foot several times. Now I'll come to what I consider a more structural problem that has stymied Guyana before and after independence, where the two major parties, PPPC and PNC, are by and large race-based political parties. And both have failed to allow for broadening of the leadership in a manner that gives comfort to a large cross-section of Guyana. And I want to take a pause from my written notes to make the point that a lot of the concern and what you would call it extreme views expressed by persons on one side or the other are really about having a party that doesn't reflect their hue, should I say demographic, for want of a better term. And I think I have better terms. But the point I'm making there is that I should be able to walk into a PNC office or outreach building to the Chedijagan Research Center and have a sense that among us all are Guyanese who are reflective of a practical demographic of the country. And I think I wrote recently about a situation where for the PPP, the only leader in the PPP, the only leaders from the PPP are all of one ethnic hue, and likewise for the PNC with a short exception. It seems to me that the failure to give meaningful decision-making status and positions across race lines within each parties on a practical, proportionate basis has contributed in no small way to the maiming of the Guyana's constitution and the screeching silence from CARICOM. And this shows how extensive the problem is. It's not just localized to Guyana. When you can have CARICOM silence and the abuses to the Constitution, the violation of the Constitution, it speaks to some partisanship or major partisanship on the part of CARICOM. And maybe, as untrue as it is or as true as it is, they are thinking that the PPP is not reaching out enough to their non-traditional base. And my question to the leadership is, have your non-traditional supporters not performed as well as your traditional supporters when placed in leadership positions? As is now being shown, in the United States of America, the Constitution, Congress, and courts can be thwarted, victimized, and manipulated by the executive. And we have seen so much of this in Guyana. This to a lesser extent is according to the United Kingdom. However, they are all democracies, the United Kingdom and the US of A, with powerful institutions that can withstand the onslaught of an out-of-control executive, unlike our fledgling democracy of Guyana. That needs input from the international community to stay on the course of democracy. And it is my belief that the interventions of the international community caused the appointment of Justice Claudette Singh and will cause Granger, if I may speculate, to set a date within a week. My only fear is that he might attempt to set it 3 months plus out. in the 31st, in August 31st to September 6th edition of The Economist, they carried a feature article titled Democracy's Enemy Within. And it said democracies are generally thought to die at the barrel of a gun. Well, these days, however, they are more likely to be strangulated slowly in the name of the people. And in Guyana, we have survived the strangulation of our constitution. And we have indeed come a long way from what obtained in, even though the cabinet has not resigned and the president has not resigned, a number of other breaches of the constitution. The fact is, the Justice Patterson has set a time period for elections. Granger, I think, will be forced by the international community to set a date. It just how much beyond or close to February it will be determined. But these things are not happening primarily or even mainly because I should say with some equitability that it's happening because of the joint efforts of the opposition parties and the international community. Now that we are in a home stretch, the national and regional elections with manifesto commitments where promises and words can be powerful. But I ask all of you who are involved in the process to let the actions be really representative of the promises you made. We ought not to have this 10-20% success rate against our manifestos. The manifestos are a serious document. As much as Trump has been lambasted by the media, he is still trying to enforce a lot of the promises he made prior to elections. Let not the pre and post election periods be faced with race baiting politics, vendetta politics, unleashing Soko and Sarah on those who have held office. Let us crush that evil. That I consider an evil. A relevant and core pivot to our newfound outlook is that we need to have royalties renegotiated at a fair and reasonable level. All of this is connected. Raymond made different connections and I'm making this one. If the PNCR and PPPC can condone the royalty waivers granted to Exxon, which they must not, but if they do, then our government can grant tax waivers on liabilities owed by our large businesses and significantly reduce and or eliminate onerous taxes on our people that are the highest in the Caribbean region. And this is something we must give a lot of thought to. Our taxes are way excessive. If the Commissioner General wishes, he can legally pressure businesses and get up to about 500 billion. I think right now they're at 300 billion, and he said they have already exceeded their targets by 45 billion for 2019. And I know he is not really pushing it, but because of the tax rates and the structure and the mechanism, and even some partisanship, which doesn't necessarily come from the top of the GRA, we have been virtually sub-dry, unlike other countries in the Caribbean, which have far more tax-friendly rates. I will close by cautioning the opposition supporters to protest with caution against this illegal executive government. Violence, boarding, and looting is not in the country's interest. Every action has consequences, right or wrong. So you might be right, and yet the repercussions could be so devastating that it would have been better not to do anything. But I still encourage protests. I believe that is the right thing to do. The government must be seen and portrayed as illegal. The ministers have no standing. The president has no standing in terms. It's a caretaker president, and these are things that have to be have to be spoken with clarity and constantly. Let our actions be right without rancor and arrogance, and insolence or disrespect. And this is where I had an experience, I think it was in December of 2018, shortly after the no confidence vote had passed. And everybody was having cheers, and to me it was a kind of a gloating event. And we must avoid that. Wherever we come from, we're Guyanese, we must avoid that. A party wins, and I believe in the two-party system. I believe that if we can strengthen the parties across the different demographics and cross sections, it's a win-win situation. So I can walk into the PNC or the PDP meeting of any race and feel comfortable. So this gloating will go away, because what happens is when you speak as a Guyanese of a particular that traditionally supported a party, what happens when there is such a division, when there is such a clear demarcation between the traditional supporters of each party, is that you are automatically frowned upon and look what happened to Terence Campbell. I mean, that speaks for itself. He was, he was denigrated, he was pilloried, his business was threatened, and all manner of things. Yeah, but it's easy to become a coward with a gun to your head. Our bigness is in our unity. Our bigness is in our unity, not our numbers. And I want to mention that I'm impressed with the nomination, appointment, and conduct of Justice Claudette Singh. Our management of GTOM has avoided conflict, which could very well have caused a combustion. Prior to her appointment, consider what were the demands of the PNs, what they sold to their supporters about house registration. My only regret on Claudette's pronouncement so far, which I hope will be withdrawn, is this merger of this house to house. But that thing is a fallacy. It's monkey business. It's all nonsense. There's no way they can register 470,000 people in 1 month or 1.5 months. They have no electronic record. That has to go. We just have to focus on it. Hopefully she will make that pronouncement. It claims an objection period, and we take it from there. But generally, I have found what she has done. We haven't spoken of the violence. Ramon spoke of the violence that happened in this country. In the 60s, we lost. In the 70s, we lost Rodney and a few others. I think there were the ballot boxes movements where we didn't have to come to the place of poll. Probably that was in the 70s, 73. Well, the 80s, pretty much it was iron fist dictatorship. Then you had the Mofai in the 90s, and then a mini coup was attempted in the 2000 to 2008 period that ex-President Jagdeo managed to thwart. So Raymond said we're dealing with a party that rigs elections in the PDP. I am saying no, there was no rigging from 92. But then rigging happens in the United States. The degree to which it goes, 2%. But what happened in the 70s and 60s was probably more like, and 80s was probably more like 40% rigging. It is my belief that constitutional reform is only possible and will be effective when we have credible executive leadership in office, which has been lacking for decades as it relates to constitutional reform. I don't feel that parties that are likely to lose in elections should be talking about constitutional reform, nor do I think opposition parties, not that they should not be talking, but the trust, the decision, the template should start with a comfortably elected executive that can speak to constitutional reform. So you have the David Hinds, Lincoln Lewis, Nigel Hughes, and Freddie Kissoon to a lesser extent. And there are many more. I'm trying to balance the names, to be frank. But I know a lot of you talk of constitutional reform. But to me, it will be a newly elected government sitting down with the opposition. They're comfortable in their space. There is no threat of them being voted out. And the leadership does what is best for Guyana and for Guyanese. But this clutching at straws, I saw the most crazy article ever from J.K. Lal in yesterday's Gamra with what pardon? G and K. Well, maybe it's J in your language. But the point is, some of his pronouncements were, I questioned his sanity, to be frank. It just, you know what some of them are saying? Let's postpone elections, let's say for 2 years, have constitutional reform, so that what? And they're also saying during that period, the current executive will remain in power. And you'll get a Nagumutu type number 2 in the form of, if possible, in the form of Jackie or Irfan. We need to have fixed election dates. This is just my 2 pence to the constitutional reform, except in the case of a successful no confidence vote. And JICA must always be in a state of readiness. And I close by saying it is insightful that Justice Claudette Singh said on September 19, 2019, that she focused on all objective factors before informing on the readiness of JICA. Her action may well have avoided much violence, even at the expense of an illegal government. Thank you.
Okay. We have quite a lot from Mr. Nigel Hinds, and I won't delay you much longer. Suffice it to say that I was looking through some documents just the other day, and this was from a report of the elections, I think, in 2001. And the chairman of the elections, sorry, this was in 1992, and the chairman of the Elections Commission at the time was a gentleman by the name of Rohee, and he was writing his reflections on elections in Guyana and the role of JICA. And this is what he had to say, and I quote: "It is the role of JICA to create and maintain the confidence of the people in the process, that is the electoral process, by fully involving them in transparent participation in elections." These are good words, which we don't hear much of these days. That was post-1992 elections. And restoring confidence in JICA, because at the time when Collins took over JICA, it was worse than it is now. And people still have tremendous amount of mistrust of the electoral process and of JICA, especially in the situation we have now, with the AP and AFC seeking as best as they could to control or dominate over the process. I now invite Mr. Christopher Ram to address the gathering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. When I was first invited to participate in this activity, it was scheduled for September 18th. And the topic that was on the table, September 18th, its implications and beyond. Well, it didn't take place on September 18th because of an expected event of September 19th. And I think, in many ways, the events of September 19th are probably more crucial than the events of September 18th. And when I speak of events, I speak of a statement made by the chairperson of the Guyana Elections Commission, Justice Claudette Singh, and a statement made by the leader of the opposition, Mr. Nigel, almost immediately after. Let me say, I fundamentally disagree with the position taken by Mr. Nigel. Absolutely fundamentally, out of respect for the table and the venue at which we are. I shall reserve further comments regarding Mr. Jagdeo's pronouncements on that fateful day. But I shall speak, and I shall speak very soon. Now, September 18th confronted us with an illegal government as of 1 minute past midnight of that night. That is beyond question. Whether the events of September 19th have served to legitimize this illegality is something we'll have to consider. And we must consider. So that's the context in which I will make some brief remarks. I would like to hold back on my views, even if they're wrong. Now, we are facing, and we've just had an Article 4 consultation by the International Monetary Fund, which has praised us quite profusely about our performance. It says, however, some serious things if you read between the lines. For example, it says that the reserves in this country have fallen to half of what it ought to be in a safe situation. And that is because of the profligacy of the government that we have, or we had, as of a couple of days ago. So your reserves gone. Good. Your exchange rate. Now, the Bank of Guyana has sought by a regulated mechanism, a fiat, to control the official rate. And they have done a commendable job. You try to get money on the street, and it's a different situation altogether. It's racing towards 225, 230. And yes, I wanted someone else to say it. It is 230 indeed. So we have a serious problem. That feeds into your cost of living, your inflation index. And so when the IMF says it's 1.6, you take it with a pinch of salt. We have a situation as well where we have more gold being sold, exported from Guyana, that is being produced in Guyana. And you know why? because we have the situation of gold from Venezuela coming through Guyana. There are serious implications to this. Venezuela, as you know, whether we like it or not, whatever you think of Maduro, Venezuela is on an international embargo, limited it might be, and we are playing with trouble. We've decided to put this country on elections mode, regardless of the consequences to our country. Let's look at the performance of the productive sector. Sugar, rice, bauxite. Sugar can hardly be described as a shadow of itself. Thousands and thousands of workers have been put on the red line. And we tend to forget those things. Again, let's talk elections. We continue to depend on remittance. Our business community has been in a form of limbo. And all because on December 21, the Parliament, National Assembly of Guyana voted, after listening to a debate in which the government took a most casual approach to the serious issues raised by the opposition. It lost. Because one man stood for his conscience and said, I'm surrounded by sugar workers who are struggling to send their children to school, to put bread or roti on their table, and to keep their families intact. That's why that man voted. You may say he's my client, and therefore I'm partial. I'm also partial to good causes. So, when I prepared for September 18th, its implications and beyond, it was against that background. A background that we would probably have more of the same, but at least we in Guyana will remember that you don't get anything without being willing to struggle. I am no supporter of the People's Progressive Party, but I can say that the party and the Working People's Alliance have been parties of struggle. Things do change, and sometimes they change diametrically, and well, they have changed. They have changed. So what are we likely to find out? One of the statements, as I said, I will leave one aside for another forum and another time. One of the statements made suggests that elections would not be held before 435 days between the no confidence motion and the earliest possible date, because Justice Claudette Singh, who gets encomiums from the table, has decided she will write the president and say, we're going to be ready by the end of February. What does that mean? Of course, the president abdicated his responsibility and his duty to name an election date, as the Constitution requires, but we don't want to do that. So between now and then, you and I will be denied our right to speak through our parliamentary representatives. Check Article 9 of the Constitution. We are denied of that right. That has serious implications if you care about human rights. The right to vote, the right for a decision of Parliament to be carried out. Those are fundamental, but the right to vote is a human right. It's absolutely non-negotiable. So we'll have 435 days. And if Justice Claudette Singh has her way, as she seems to be allowed to have her way, elections will not be held for approximately 171 days. Let's put that into some context. Justice Claudette Singh, in a decision made on the 26th of January 2001, said elections must be held no later than on or before, no later than March 31. You know how many days those were? 64 days. And here we are, sitting back and say, glory to Hail Mary. We're going to have elections, perhaps, in 171 days. What happens to you? So you have your entire electoral, your constitutional, and your democratic infrastructure shown by the wayside. It means nothing. And then we are going to have a full year of spending with no parliamentary oversight. What happens to your contingencies fund? What happens to your consolidated fund? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No oversight. And we accept that. They're not all of us. Some people were protesting. And great that they did on the 19th. So money will be spent. Now the contingencies fund is a funny thing. It's a sub-fund of the consolidated fund. And you can only spend under very strict conditions. Urgent, unavoidable, and something else. And unforeseen. All that has been thrown by the wayside. And the way the contingencies fund operates as a sub-fund of the consolidated fund is that if, please tell me that. It operates this way. If you find those conditions, unforeseen, unavoidable, and the other one, if you can't do it, the minister has the authority up to 2% of the expenditure for the preceding year to spend, and then to go back to the next sitting of Parliament for approval. We abandon all of that. And we, like weaklings, you like weaklings, and I like weakling, decide we're going to take it because they don't want to listen to crap. We're going to preach about elections. And I want to tell you something about that IMF Article 4. And I don't believe it's get on with it. I am using figures that come from that. At mid-2018, the population in Guyana was listed as 745,000. That report says that the population now, and it comes from state authorities, 782,000. We have never had. In fact, it has all mostly gone south. These are the things we ought to be concerned about. Now, you've got your constitutional architecture, you've got your financial architecture. You have the potential, though I believe we have compromised that situation, where our country, we don't know what game Canada is playing, maybe Justin Trudeau is playing a different game. Black mask, brown mask, whatever. Euro Canadian. A, B, and E. They made perhaps the boldest statement that they've made for decades. And then what did we do? What did we do? We undermined them. What was the potential? What was the possibility? Because remember, in the Ramatar administration, when Ramatar prorogued Parliament, President Ramatar, I'm sorry, when Parliament was prorogued, I was not in favor of it because I thought it was improper purpose. That is a different story. Nandlall and I can talk about that one. Yeah, and you're hearing that in the UK, that you could do these things for an improper purpose. That's not it. What the European Union did was withheld money. That was a possibility. I think we've undermined them now. What signals have we sent? That, look, we are going to accept it. We all we want is elections. Elections when? 2 years ago, David Granger gave unmistakable signal as to what his intentions were. To manipulate the elections. Took James Patterson, an advisor to Basil Williams. I believe Claudette Singh was also an advisor to Basil Williams. We got to be the most insane people in this world. We really have to be. So the events of 2019, of September 19th, 2019, have fundamentally altered the position on September 18th, 2019. But some things remain in place that you don't have. We don't have our parliamentary democracy. Sovereignty belongs to the people, and they exercise it through their parliamentary representatives. We don't have that. We don't have financial management. What we have an illegal government, an illegal president. We are told that peace is guaranteed, and Raymond is helpful in telling us that peace is guaranteed. That's quite interesting. We must not take it for granted that because we have meekly accepted that we're going to have elections sometime deep down into the future, that the election campaign is going to be anything but nasty. I hear about rigging and how much you vote, 40%. We have a one-seat majority, and that's what we've had for close to a decade. So, 2,000 votes flipped one way to the other can make substantial difference. Let us not be naive, folks. We are facing it. And as I said, Granger knew what he was doing with Patterson. And Patterson did his this year. And then Claudette Singh, mind-bogglingly, I don't know whether Justice Singh knows how to use a computer and how you merge data. I don't know that she knows the process that you have to go through when you try to merge, when you get numbers thrown up. And she made a mind-boggling decision that, look, this thing, which clearly was highly questionable, if not illegal, the house registration, we're going to accept it in part. And we proceed the election, and we all said, God, as I said, Hail Mary. I'm a Catholic to this, so I can use Mary. And then what did she do after that? She now tells us let's talk sometime after February 2020. So folks, I think the society, and society including the main political parties, civil society, the professionals, have got to decide what is it we are going to do now? What role do we see ourselves playing? As I said, and I'll close on this note. The party, in my view, has beaten people's resolve on how to struggle at this time. It needs to get a clear, concise, and decisive message and signal to the people of our country. Thank you very much.
For those of you who have listened very attentively to Mr. Gaskin, I'm sure you will agree with me that he has raised some controversial issues, and he has raised some issues that will require a lot of both external and internal debate and discussion and debate forward. But that is the purpose of meetings of this type, to invite you to come to them to express your view. Some of you belong to political parties, some of you belong to civic organizations, etc. And you have the possibility to express your views within those organizations. Many of you do not belong to a political party or a civic organization, and therefore you look forward to activities of this type to hear other people's views as well as express your views as well. So every view matters. Every view matters. Every view counts in the context of the general debate and discussion that will take place in our country on these very crucial and critical matters that is affecting our lives now and will affect our lives down the road. Christopher Ram has raised some issues which I think has been the basis for Mr. Nandlall's presentation and beyond that as well. I now invite Anil to address this.
Thank you, Kamal. Chairman, distinguished colleagues at the head table, former President Ramatar and former President Hinds, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Permit me to thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this important discourse, and permit me to inform you that I speak here in my capacity as a citizen of Guyana, Anil Nandlall, and I will speak on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, with the other normally speak. I have been speaking on this issue a lot in recent times, and I've had great difficulty in finding proper and appropriate linguistic formulation to describe the status, the state of affairs, and the unfolding events taking place in this country. It reminds me of Shakespeare, Julius Caesar. O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Guyana as a nation state finds itself with no parallel since British independence, none since the Second World War. No government has ever allowed its tenure, its constitutional life, its legitimacy to expire. It's not that events have not occurred which would have precipitated the postponement of elections when they become due, for whatever reason they may become due. It has happened before. And every constitution of every civilized nation has a mechanism in it which allows the government of the day to seek an extension of time of its life. We have done it in Guyana. Forbes Barnum is well known for rigging elections in Guyana. Desmond Hoyt is well recorded to have rigged the 1985 election. But neither of those two men ever allowed the constitutional tenure to come to an end without seeking a renewal. It happened to Forbes Barnum after the 73 election when he went to the referendum. But he got his Attorney General, Dr. Shahabuddin at the time, to do the requisite thing that was constitutionally authorized to keep his government life intact as it went to the referendum of 78, which lasted until the promulgation of the 1980 Constitution. And everything was done smoothly, though the referendum was massively rigged. The international community, that was Guyana's internal problem. The international community could not have pointed a hand of criticism at the constitutional process that Barnum pursued. Fast forward to Desmond Hoyt. 1985, December the 9th was the elections. 5 years thereafter would have taken us to December 1990. Because of tremendous political pressure on the ground, the intervention of Carter, the international community, the demands for electoral reforms became overwhelming and irresistible. Raymond wants to add the fall of communism. All those concatenate to force Hoyt to go to the parliament, to extend the life of that government to 1992. And that is how we sailed past those constitutional tumultuous waters, and the ship of Guyana sailed into constitutional harbor in the 92 elections. But here, the arrogance and ignorance, a lethal combination, prevented those in charge of the nation state of Guyana, prevented them from approaching the opposition within the time allowed by the Constitution to seek the extension of that life. They are above that. They are above the law. They are above the Constitution. The people of this country do not matter. So we will do what we want to do. I will hold elections where I will determine, not what the Constitution says, when I am satisfied that I can deliver credible elections. When the PNC speaks about credible elections by itself, Forbes Barnum used to call it autonomous. That aside, but these are the facts. These are the facts. Don't let no one tell you that the PPP acted irresponsibly by not going back to Parliament. I see today in the newspapers, the AFC at a press conference is calling upon the PPP to go back to Parliament. Well, the PPP cannot go back to Parliament because the time for going back to Parliament has expired. And quite apart from that, if we go back to Parliament, what are we going back to do? To reward those who have kicked us aside, kicked the rule of law aside, kicked democracy aside, and kicked the Constitution aside? That us as a people, that is what we want to embrace. Those of us who study philosophy are au fait with how society evolved, how man came from living in anarchy in the jungle and formed himself first into society, and then from society developed government. It was all built thousands of years ago on consent of the human being. The human being appreciating that I will give up all my inalienable, God-given freedom, and I'm going to sacrifice that, and I'm going to enter into this union called government that will offer me certain protection, that will offer me certain services, but fundamentally it is a consent between us that we are going to be bound by a pact that both of us must understand without any apparatus to coerce us necessarily. That both of us must understand that in this pact, it depends upon our voluntariness to remain in this union together. Because I am giving you all my freedom. I'm giving you my welfare. I'm giving you my family's future. And you have to give me back. And I'm allowing you to govern me. But you have to protect me. And you have to give me that in return, which we have agreed. But most importantly, we all are going to play by this rule, or this rule book. And that in modern society is the citizen, the government, and that rule book is called the Constitution. What has been done today, as I told Christopher Ram in a television program sometime this week, the damage and destruction that has been done to the nation state of Guyana, to the constitutional architecture of Guyana, to the institutions of democracy in Guyana, cannot and will never be able to be calculated in monetary terms. It is immeasurable. Just think for a moment which government in Guyana in the future will now obey a no-confidence motion successfully passed against them. Which government will obey a no-confidence motion in the future and hold elections within 90 days? Which government? Do you understand what we have done to the rule by which we are to live if civilization is to continue and we are to remain as part of the civilized democratic world? Do you understand what we have done? What guarantee do we have that we are going to have elections in 2020? You tell me, Planet Singh's indication of readiness to a president who has shown absolute disregard for the Constitution. You think he's going to bother with Planet Singh? On what basis? Because he got shamed? Because he is afraid of what he said before? He's afraid to breach promises? No, my friends. Justice Planet Singh said that GCOM can be ready by the end of February. Can be ready. The president in turn said that I will then have to meet. Listen to this man's statement. I've never seen anything like this. I will leave you the statement just now. But let me tell you in essence what his response is. I will now have to meet with GCOM for them to satisfy me that they can be ready to deliver credible elections. Do you know what that means, Conrad? Do you know the ordeal to which we are going to be subject to meet the satisfaction of this clear individual? That is what he said. I am telling you, I have it here. That no, he said, I have it quoted where? I quoted it. He said he was going to meet with cabinet, I understand that. He said so. But he went on to say that I have to meet with GCOM and I have to satisfy myself that they are in a position to deliver credible elections. This constitution is that we are not governed by a constitution anymore. So you can't look for this document for guidance. Because this document says that the president is entrusted and empowered exclusively to the exclusion of everyone else. That's what it means. With the responsibility of fixing a date for elections. That is the president's exclusive responsibility. To be discharged by him in the exercise of his deliberate judgment, not dependent upon anything else. When the president fixes that date, that is his duty. GCOM automatically is expected as an independent organization to be ready. And the system that they have there allows them to be ready. That is how elections are run all over the world. The power that the president of Guyana has is a power that is common in all constitutions in respect of the head of state. In England, it is Boris Johnson advising the Queen because the Queen is the head of state. In Canada, it's Trudeau advising the Queen because the Queen is the head of state. In Trinidad, it's Prime Minister advising the President because the President is the head of state, the Prime Minister is head of government. Guyana is the President advising himself because he's both head of government and head of state. So this incestuous dependency that has been concocted and manufactured between the president and the chairman of GCOM for the purpose of holding elections is violative of the Constitution. Absolutely violates the Constitution, and of course was only created because the president wanted a basis to delay. I mean, every school child knows that now. And I disagree with my brother Nigel. There is no person who has written more glowingly of Claudette Singh than I have done when she was sworn in. I complimented, I regaled her about her judicial scholarship, about her erudition on the bench, about the brave or courage demonstrated in the case of Esther Ferreira, where she was prepared and she did, and I believe properly so, legally, terminated the life of an entire government by 2 years and ordered elections to be held within 60 days. She didn't have to consult GCOM. She didn't, and rightfully so. GCOM had to be ready. The PPP was in government. You think the PPP could have dared go back to Claudette Singh and say, Madam, we are not ready? And I expected that type of approach. This is the judgment. Justice Claudette Singh wrote all of this. All of this. Let me read what she said about the ID card. She wrote 10 pages glorifying the right to vote. Ram spoke about them, the constitutional right and the fundamental right, 10 pages. When she was, remember the thing was about knocking on the ID card. No individual can barter away or waive a right conferred by the Constitution. A right to go to elections when elections are due, and a right to vote at those elections are rights in the Constitution. You can't barter them away. So when she sits there, and she had one set of commissioner this side, and one commissioner this side, and the secretariat bringing reports after reports, she's presiding over the bartering away of Guyanese rights. The very thing that she said she did it. Because the elections were due when she was appointed. It was already due. The CCC had already ruled. And she's not you and I. That we got to go and study what the CCG said. She's 10 times brighter than us. This is what she said. This is the judgment. So these are permanent records of this country. It follows, therefore, that no political party can arrogate unto itself the power to barter away or waive constitutional rights of members of the electorate. No political party can barter away or waive the constitutional right of the electorate. The president is waiving all of our rights by deferring election.
Healing and not waiving.
Wavering and bartering and smashing. It goes on. The voice of the numbers of electorate to speak through the ballot cannot be silenced by arrogance or agreements among political parties. Even Parliament cannot do so, since the voice of members of electorate to speak through the ballot is a constitutional right under Article 59. That is the very constitutional right we have been clamoring for at the time when she took office. And what did the Honorable Justice Clarence Singh do? Rather than give effect to all the things that she said in this judgment and give effect to the Constitution, she began a process of panchayat. Panchayat. Trying to meet both sides, throwing the Constitution aside that mandates election to be held. She started this about time frames and which list we should use, when there is a list there that could have been used. On what basis are you going to use the house-to-house data when the law says that once you are registered, you cannot be re-registered? You got 470,000 people. 90% of them are duplicate registration, meaning that they are illegal registration. And you are going to use that data and delay elections. GCOM failed the people of this country. Failed the people of this country. Now, we have a date. We don't have a date, we have a time frame. Now, what happens? There is no government of Guyana recognized by the laws of the Constitution. There is none. You have no president who is legal. You have no prime minister who is legal. You have no ministers who are legal. You have no vice presidents who are legal. That is the truth. That is what the Constitution says. Anil Nandlall didn't say so. The Constitution says that. So what will happen in this country from now until whenever there is election? Every dollar that is going to be spent is going to be spent by a government that has no legitimacy. So it means, or it's not a government anymore, it's a grouping of people pretending to be a government.
Yeah.
So it's going to be spent by a gang or a grouping of people as masquerading as government. How did the spending of that money, whether it comes from the contingency fund, as Mr. Ram points out, or the consolidated, how can it be lawful? Every decision made, a decision made by an authority that has no legality is a nullity. That's the most basic elementary principle of public law. If you are not authorized to make a decision, then the decision cannot be lawfully made. Mr. Rohee and Comrade Rohee and Comrade Ramatar were once General Secretaries of the PPP. Their tenure came to an end. You think they can make decisions now as General Secretary of the PPP? Would that decision stand? Prime Minister Hinds is here. He was a former Prime Minister. His tenure has come to an end. Can he now still make decisions as Prime Minister? Well, that is the position that you have now. There is vacancy in the government. Vacancy. You have usurpers. You have trespassers. This is what the president said. This is a man who is holding office illegally and is offended by the Guyanese people protesting against him holding office illegally. My brain won't process certain kind of information. This guy is supposed to be so grateful that he's met with only protest. My only response is, this is the response of the president, of the person holding the office of the president. My only response is the government is abiding by the Constitution. It has allowed the Elections Commission, an autonomous body, to do its work. I shall be meeting my cabinet in a few minutes to discuss the letter received from Clarence. Meeting what cabinet? He has no cabinet. He is not the president and there is no cabinet. He says this. He keeps speaking about the situation in Nigeria. And he condemns what he calls lawlessness against his office. Which office? Which office does he hold? He said, holding, he was speaking about the comrades who are protesting. He said, holding the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Karen Cummings, hostage in her vehicle. There is no Minister of Foreign Affairs. He speaks about running down David Patterson, Minister of Public Infrastructure. There is nobody holding that position. That position is expired. Patterson's appointment expired. He used to be. So, comrades, we are in a serious situation. Mr. Ram dealt admirably internally, but let us look externally. We, Guyana, and I speak about Guyana, and that's why I'm saying that this thing has gone beyond party politics. This here is an issue that must concern every right-thinking member of society. This deals with our future, which, in the absence of a no confidence motion, this precedent having been set, and the government gets, based on Mr. Ram's calculation, and we don't know whether that's minimal, 400 and something days extra, that over a year extra beyond its tenure. What's stopping a government in ordinary circumstance, after its tenure comes to an end, from just refusing to fix the date for election? The president just refused to do so. And that is why I go back to that foundation of society. You see, society can only work if the people continue to be accepted to be governed. All about consent. It will break up if the people of Guyana, let us say it's partisan, so you have government supporters, you have community supporters. If every non-government supporter tomorrow decides to take a position, active position, against this government, what will happen? You think 3,000 policemen can deal with that situation? You think 2,000 army men can deal with that situation? That is the danger of what I'm speaking about. That is what this government has exposed us to. If they can violate the law, the constitution, the supreme law, in respect of an issue that is so fundamental as to the life of the government itself, you think that it will respect your constitutional rights, or the constitution in respect of your rights, about your little house somewhere in the back of a fire, or wherever it is that you live? They are prepared to violate the constitution in relation to the entire government. You think they will bother with your rights? That is what, you can't put monetary value on this. You can't put monetary value on this. So internationally, we are a member of CARICOM, we are a member of UN, we are a member of various trade organizations, we owe international obligations under international financial institutions, we have international legal obligations to discharge under various treaties in the world, but our government now is illegal. That jeopardizes us on all those fronts. Remember the problem that we had simply because we couldn't pass 2 laws in the parliament in relation to the anti-money laundering bills? Well, imagine when the entire government becomes illegal, what problems will unfold in those sectors? We have a border dispute in the court, in the World Court. Can we, now that the government has lost its legitimacy, can we sustain that proceedings, or those proceedings? If Venezuela recognized the weakness of the nation state of Guyana, that it has an executive vacuum, and it decides now to enforce its claim, these are the dangers to which this government has exposed us. We have international obligations. Whether we will continue to be part of the Democratic League of Nations is still an open question. I don't know. I don't know. Because as I said at the beginning, there is no country to which we can turn for guidance. None. So how do we move forward? Technically, the president, the person holding the office of the president, as I said, he is not the president. He can't even legally issue the proclamation to fix the election. That is also a position that we have to consider, because he's not the president. When the Constitution gives that power to the president, the Constitution is obviously referring to a president whose tenure is intact, a legal president. not an imposter. So you see how deep and complex these issues are, and you know, they just toss them aside. What will happen from now to then? Why is it? Why we can't have elections before February? What compelling reason have any one of you heard in this room? I haven't heard anyone. Any. What reason we cannot have an election before December of this year? Why? Why? In compliance with the supreme law of this land. No sensible reason has come forward. None. Everything in Guyana, I have a whole bundle of law that I can read to you. Our system is structured in such a way that everything and everyone, every institution, every edifice, every political authority, every public authority, every public officer must bend and bow to the glory of the supremacy of the Constitution. That is our legal system. The Constitution now has lost its majesty. The courts of our country have lost their coercive power. You go to them for justice, and you get some bifurcated, ambiguous orders, which are unenforceable. I think that has been our experience so far. So we are in a serious dilemma and tragedy. And we need to continue to build this kind of awareness, and I don't believe that we cannot have elections before February. I don't believe that we cannot have elections. Because the quicker we come out of this, the better. Thank you very much.
You know, as I look around this room, I see some persons who live through certain periods in our country, including myself. One of the most difficult periods that we lived through there was during the border period. I know there are many of you who have lived through that period. But this period that we're going through right now is 100-fold worse than we went through. More dangerous, more treacherous. And I only hope that our people, and the people in the audience here, and the people of this country understand what is likely to happen in Guyana if we continue like this. It's extremely serious. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, the panelists are pretty anxious to hear your views, hear your comments, and if needs be, to respond to them. So I will now wish to open the floor. I know some people here are rather long-winded. So I'm not being dictatorial here, but you know it's almost 7:30, and many of us have had a long day. Please, I'm appealing to you. Ask your questions without perambulating around the question. Just go straight to the question. You don't need to say because and why. Go straight to the question, that's number one. And number two, if you have a comment, maybe you will also indicate, make your comment as precise, as concise, and as explicit as possible. Next, please.
Yes, Mr. Ram, how long will it take for our international reserves to become zero?
It's a function of receipts and payments. So unless you can, if one were to look at the recent pattern, then not only can it get to zero, but it can fall into negative. But it depends on how it happens. With oil, you're likely to have some flow of money, but that's a conversation for another day. It's not possible at this stage, quite say, answer that question. But a pattern of spending is very troubling, and it can get to zero. It can get to negative.
Thank you. The gentleman there, and then the next one in the green shirt.
Good night, everyone. I just want to make one recognition and one comment. The recognition is thanks to Mr. Nandlall and Mr. Shakara. They were able to stop the House registration for the people who were around. So I would like to recognize that. And one suggestion for moving forward is we need to stop recognizing the government and the president. We need to stop saying the government and the president. And we need to encourage as many persons as possible to stop inviting them, to give them a floor to speak, like what happened at GMS. Those are things we need to start moving forward.
Thank you. The gentleman. There's no representative official. That's a minute. That's good. Good. There is no official representative of the PDP here as far as I know. If there's one, please put up your hand. So we can't answer that question.
How do we phrase the question? So are we willing to make the consequence of it? Or are we
meaning we, the citizen? I don't know. That's all right. That's a general question. That's a general question that we hope that this activity will help to trigger a debate and a discussion and some activism in the society. But all have to be involved. That's what the political parties and it's the social organization. Yes, I agree with you. So if you're not your member organization. Gentlemen, please.
This is what it says. It says, during any period when the office of president is vacant, and let me remind this audience, I've said this before. During any period when the office of the president is vacant, and it has become vacant by operation of the Constitution, the office shall be assumed by the Prime Minister, provided that if the vacancy occurs while the Prime Minister is absent from care, or while he or she is by reason of physical or mental infirmity unable to perform the functions of his office, the functions of the office of President shall, until the Prime Minister returns, or until he is again able to perform the functions, may be discharged by any other minister, being an elected member. If there is no Prime Minister, by such minister being an elected member of the Assembly, as the Cabinet shall elect. Or if there is no Prime Minister and no Cabinet, by the Chancellor. But you do have an acting Chancellor. You do have an acting Chancellor. The problem is, nobody wants to take these things seriously. This is what the Constitution says.
Okay, comrades. Is there anyone else?
Gaskin.
What?
Hello from Gaskin.
No, you have to let's see if we get somebody else. We'll come back to you. Is there anyone? Oh, sorry. The second one.
The international observers in the election previous year, but the opposition rejected that. They took the matter to the court. And the court found that it was bringing in the electoral commission dealing with the results. I think it's just about a year ago. And they were by election. So I think we cannot escape agreeing with bringing Gaskin position. The complete election begins instantly unlawful within the G Commission. So we're going to talk about probably having audited. That's the point I want to talk about. What are we doing in relation to minimizing the public about bringing election? We have the big question of a big election, but the biggest fear in the mind of Guyanese is rigging of election. What are we doing, or what is being done to not just minimize the fear, but to safeguard the whole electoral process that the rigging will not take place within the commission?
Anyone from the panel who wants to deal with that? Let me just say, first of all, the media statement. Sections of the media started this because if you follow some sections of the mainstream media, they're already beginning to sensitize the public about the prospects of a rigged election, which nobody wants, but they are already sensitizing people so far. That is one aspect that is being done so far. The fifth escape is playing a role here. In addition to that, in addition to that, you have many people writing letters to the editors of the newspaper. You have many people in this organization who write letters. You have some radio stations, Freedom Radio, they have people who talk about these things as well as TV stations who talk about these. Then you have some representatives of civil society. They speak up. So the question I think you're aiming at is that notwithstanding all this talking that is taking place, the real question is what is being done to bring all these views and forces into something so tangible that it could lead to what I think all of the panelists said, which is a mass movement in the streets. Like what happens, for example, in so many countries in North Africa, eventually bring about change in those countries. You have to have mass of people out there. Otherwise, so that experience has shown that whoever has control of the forces apparatus of the state, the police, the military, intelligence services, and so on, they will use that to safeguard themselves at the end of the day.
If I may add, the mechanisms in place at the polling stations allowed for the counting to be taking place at the polling station and the results to be posted at the polling station. It also allows for scrutineers and observers of each party to be at the polling station. The glitch that, and it's not a glitch, it would be an open abuse of the process, is when you and I, using today's technology, can calculate based on what has been posted at the polling station, the actual result, very close to it. And then GCOM comes out and gives you a contrary response. So it is only in that area, because to my knowledge, at the 2015 elections, the shenanigans that may have occurred took place right there. And they have not been able to reconcile what was on the polling, the numbers at the polling stations, with what GCOM came up with. For those who were involved in the process, there was a cascade of collapsing systems, meaning they started saying that Badri, responsible is team, that failed. The gentleman With backup, that failed. And then you had to resort to something that was pretty primitive. And that's where the results came from. But it was never reconciled to what was at the polling stations.
You want to respond to your question?
Oh, let me pause again. No, I just wanted to say this. Anil advises that the current GCOM chairperson pronouncement currently taking place or took place are contrary to our pronouncement in our own judgment in 21. Because, so why are we to fool ourselves that GCOM will go along with what the polling results are posted at the polling station? If the current people is heading GCOM has violated their own integrity by the judgment that she so bravely and colorly put out in 2001 against the government of the day. So it's against that background I'm looking at going back to what Raymond said. The fear, the non-confidence in the GCOM that has developed so rapidly over the couple of years.
If I look at things comment that you're not projecting
The point I'm making here is that you can speculate about them, you can speculate with all these people.
Don't break up, please. So, I think a lot of us have recognized the reality of Guyana and electoral politics in Guyana. And therefore, every conceivable mechanism that is available to be used to protect the integrity of the machinery should be used. So if we can be able to get international presence within the Secretariat long before elections, that is a major plus. And we have that kind of resources available, and the human resources available, and they were denied by Patterson, the previous chairman. So that's one. Two, we have to look carefully at the GCOM staff. You will have seen the representations that have been made already in this respect, and the controversy that erupted. But Nigel in his presentation spoke about going into a room and feeling that the room is occupied by Guyanese. But if you go in the GCOM secretariat, you don't see Guyana being reflected. And that, unfortunately, Guyanese politics is deeply ethnic. And there is a deep correlation between ethnicity and how you vote. And therefore, that reality as a security mechanism must be reflected in the staff makeup at GCOM. So that's another one. The other issues have to do with sufficient presence on the ground to avoid voter intimidation. Those of us who are practitioners of politics in the field during election time can relate to this. There are certain communities where when 6 o'clock approaches in the evening, you see certain signs and you see the build up to intimidate and to rush voting and so on. Those things we have to guard against significantly. Then the list itself, I don't know how do we cleanse the list. Because the list, you can have, let us say, 500 electors, registered electors to vote at a particular polling place. That we have 5 polling stations. And you actually get, let us say, 480. But 300 of them are not real people. They are on the list. They've been voted. Someone go there and vote for them. Multiple voting, impostering, these things actually take place. So you need the ID card system, the method of identification. And that's why we were clamoring for extra additional qualification, we call it biometrics, greater biometrics requirement for ID purposes at the place of vote. And then of course, strong polling agents is a prerequisite. So it's right across the electoral machinery that one has to ensure that there are security mechanisms to protect the integrity, because it can. I mean, we have had a history of electoral malpractices in this country that we must be mature enough not to deny, and we must be educated enough to learn to protect the current system from those malpractices reoccurring and new ones developing.
Excuse me. You need to seek the permission of the chair before you
Yeah, but as I'm saying, yeah, but you have to have security presence. You have to have the law enforcement agents. And well, these are the real challenges that you face. I know I saw what they did to him.
Look, let's face it. There's no perfect elections. You can have a near perfect elections. But if you're looking for an election that is perfect par excellence, you may not have it. Again, I'm not saying that you need to take the steps to deal with the issues that are not occurring. But with lists, we've had experience in the past where we had something called people tests to the list, where some experts who were in the system from overseas took a certain percentage of names on the list, went into the field and tested the credibility or veracity of the names on the list, independent of GCOM. So it wasn't GCOM people who went to test the list. It was these international experts who took a certain percentage of names on the list, went into the field, checked the list, names against the list, to determine how the extent to which it was really true and acceptable. There are also questions with ID cards. There was one election that had to be postponed. GCOM asked for more time because it needed more time to distribute ID cards. They held back the ID cards distribution in such a way to give themselves time, more time, to prepare for other things. And so one of the issues that came up at that time was the question of the pace of this ID card was being distributed. Elections were already around the corner. Many people were saying that we don't have an ID card. You have elections with 4,000 ID cards still not being distributed, or still in the hands of people. So all that I'm saying is that we need to be on the lookout for all these loopholes, because these are people that sit down and think about all the different possibilities. And in fact, recommendations have been made over and over again. There's some people sitting in sort of commission could tell you. There are hundreds of recommendations that were made by studies and analysis on how to correct these deficiencies and infections. Whether it was done or not, that's for the analysts to say. But I is right. There's no shortage of experience in this country on how to deal with fraudulent elections.
I was careful to say that the greatest source of information from. I guess it was not a census, but it is something that we do have to guard against.
To me?
Yeah.
I think it's Parliament said I think from the Nandlall is taking the way society is governed has brought a lot of time. And I want to see that question forward as a issue as in the military, politics, economics, and ideology. And that is how we take the reality. So what I want to ask is how we will be their creation in head of the army and the army kind of important that the border field experience is that are we not meeting this psychological mastery? That's my point. You can bring you the regular food
There are a number of people in the government who work in India while he was commander of the GPF who are experts in something called psych. It means psychological operation. People have been trained in that kind of thing. But that shouldn't make us be fearful. Because I think what has come out of this discussion is that once you rely on what you have on the ground, that is either your supporters or followers who are alert to what is happening, all these things could be explained. Guyana is a small country, everybody knows each other, everybody talks to each other, on the social media, there's a lot of networking and things like that. These things have come out. But we can't be too optimistic also. What is required is for everyone, irrespective of the organization which you're in, to do the work of the assembly, to get to the bottom of it. Yeah.
So the appointment of King Palestine and the denial of these two it's a fair case that a rigging will be done in the secretariat. Because they can't get Balbas anymore, right? They can't, it's not like before you carry Balbas. So our party, we need to pay more attention at the secretariat at a very early stage.
That's a very valid point. Yes. We come back to that.
All the implications that we spoke about, how can this be avoided?
How all of this can be. Some of it has happened already. I don't know, you can't prevent, you can't reverse it. What we can work to do is, well, first of all, we have to get elections. I am not very impressed by what has been said so far in terms of elections that will be held in February, by the end of February. You have enough empirical data out there to show that the president has the ability and a tendency to vacillate and oscillate on this issue. So until I see that proclamation, we don't know when the elections are happening. And in the meanwhile, however, you have to continue to work to improve the integrity of the system.
So on the
This Mr. Ramazani. I want to make a couple of points. One, I want to answer just come and give a question of one man. He said that why did it change the border stuff? And that is, and people keep repeating the shadow. Benefits of both changes in that point. From the very time he got into the government, he removed the most dangerous and obnoxious clause in that constitution, which the president would not be impeached. And further than that, that the very first government of the PPP of the Chagal and Salmai, the Constitutional Commission was not able to finish its work before the next election because it changed that by Constitution Commission. Secondly, in the next stage, it finished its work and we did, I don't know how many years it
198.
198. So to keep repeating the mantra that if you didn't change the constitution, it's not true. The problem is that the constitution is not respected by the federal government and not even implemented. And you still call it for more constitutional reform. And it is not even implemented.
In fact, one of the changes, coincidentally and ironically, is the insertion into the Constitution of the no confidence motion clause. It was never there before. We put it there to, while we were in government, to allow an opposition to move on to confidence motion. That was the kind of liberal
that is one thing that one comment about. I want to also draw the government's attention of the and to answer this government question, I believe the only thing of is mass vigilance. You can't be in a few people, you can't be in a few people only expect to go. That means mass vigilance, and that is the only thing that can stop what is going to take place. Because the staff in GCOM has already demonstrated that they are PNC. In 1997, when the PNC called GCOM staff to walk out to stop the counting of the vote, 90% of the GCOM staff walked out. That is why leadership has been very important, and that is what the PNC has done, is changing the leadership of the Elections Commission to a total PNC leadership. So if you have a leadership that is PNC, then what is preventing them from operating in a wild way in the past was the leadership of the professionalism that we tried to put in place the professionalism to prevent that from taking place, because you didn't want to lock off everywhere. You couldn't anyhow because of how the people structure. And therefore, leadership, and you don't have the leadership now, that is why it's so dangerous at this point in time. And that is why you need all of these legislations that each other are talking about so vital. And finally, I want to talk about this kind of somewhat of a racial question. I want to say that the PDP has done an enormous amount and was sabotaged in many, many ways in fighting of the race. The very first thing that Dragon and Hinds did was to set up an Ethnic Relations Committee with what we thought was one of the most upright men in this country, Bishop Nandlall, George today. The PNC boycotted and slandered that man name all over the place. And from then on, we continued to work. I was part of the setting up of the Ethnic Relations Commission. When we had the talks with the PNC, myself and Lance Carberry did a lot of work to ensure that we established this Ethnic Relations Commission that is now present at this point in time. And we have done. I don't think that it is fair to just keep, when we want to attack the PNC for their racism, to also say that we are it's not true at all. It's absolutely not.
Yeah, this question as well, Mr. Gaskin. Given the examples of Charles I of England, Louis XVI of France, and Nicholas II of Russia, do you think that the conditions are close, are here, or quickly approaching for the revolution?
Any revolution
Please. No, go ahead.
I would want people to understand that the Constitution is not a critical thing. No one party could not one. The people can't change the Constitution. It's done through the process. If you don't get the participation, raise it there. That's where we are. You can't just write the Constitution. You don't understand that. It has to be mutually agreed. Or by part of the program. I'm so pessimistic right now. I came here expecting to give some assurance. But the assurance is like not is that what I'm seeking is what am I doing about where we cannot after all these years come to some important I want to live in a right place. I don't want to be really fighting somebody and looking around to hear who who said what and who was saying what, and we arguing who is doing what. We should be way past that, man. Are we a fit people together in the country? I don't think something that's the being here.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, there's one point I want to add to what Colin has said, and to what the other rapporteur said about the constitutional reform process. That sometimes we forget. What the PPP did was not merely to ensure as a government that the constitutional reform took place, but we entrusted that function to a commission comprising of the PPP as an ordinary stakeholder, the PNC as an equal stakeholder, all the political parties in the parliament, and a host of civil society organizations representing every conceivable major interest in this country. The Hindus, the farmers, the labor movement, private sector, ethnic-based organizations, the bar association, they all had representatives. And they were given all the monies requisite, necessary. And they were given, most importantly, a free mandate to travel the length and first of all to determine their own agenda. That was the first thing. How they, what modus operandi they will use. So, and you had a permanent secretariat established. Ram Karan was the chairman, vice chairman was Paris, secretary was Paris, and Derek Bernard was the vice president. Rupert Narayan was a permanent member of that secretariat. Yeah. You had consultants from South Africa, Supreme Court, and so on, India, and England. And then that body traveled this country. They made a total of 87 visits across Guyana, and they took evidence from people in relation to what they want to change. Clause by clause in the Constitution they went through. And they collected all that evidence, then went back to the Commission and called the amendments out of it. And 197 amendments were unanimously put into the Constitution by all the parties in the time. Because it was a consensual process. So the PPP didn't amend what they want to amend. The process produced those amendments, facilitated by the PPP. Government, where the PPP was allowed in every stakeholder, like everybody else. So it was that type of constitutional reform process where the people of Guyana were given like a second chance, a second referendum to change what they want to change about the modern constitution. And these points we must remember, and we keep repeating these things, and they become permanent criticism of the PPP. And I'm not even defending PPP, this is history. This is what actually happened. Alright?
I think we have come basically to the end of our meeting this afternoon. And there are just three conclusions that I personally would like to draw your attention that I have concluded. Number one is that the 14 words of Jimmy Cliff. It's a hard road to travel, a rough way to do. And as Dr. Dragon once said, the struggle will be long and hard, but we will eventually overcome. Next is this. I think most of the people here who have either spoken or who have asked questions of the panelists are of the view that, notwithstanding the challenges, the government, quote unquote, must not get away scot-free with what is happening right now. But for that to happen, it requires a combination of mass vigilance, mass mobilization, and mass action. That's the way victory could be achieved in this respect. And finally, this country which we belong to Guyana is like a barometer for analyzing a whole host of events, ethnic questions, political issues, economic issues, human relationships, and so forth. So anyone who wants to do a scientific analysis of a country like Guyana, this is the place to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you very much for coming on. We hope you haven't strained your patience in sitting through this session, and we look forward to meeting with you some other time. Thank you very much.